He believed he was the architect of the perfect crime. As a PhD student studying criminology, Bryan Kohberger spent his days analyzing the mistakes of others. How they were caught, where they slipped up, and what they felt when they crossed the line between human and monster. But today, in February 2026, he is no longer a student. He is an inmate in the Idaho Maximum Security Institution, serving 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. This is not just a story about a crime. It is a mystery of the human mind. How did someone so deeply embedded in the study of law and justice become the most hunted man in America? And why did the institutions meant to protect us fail to see the red flags that were waving for months before that terrible night in November? To understand where we are today, we have to look at the breaking news of 2026. Right now, the families of the victims are moving forward with a massive federal lawsuit against Washington State University. The details coming out of this legal battle are staggering. We now know that between August and November of 2022, there were at least 13 formal complaints filed against Kohberger. Faculty members and fellow students had documented his sexist, creepy, and predatory behavior. One professor even wrote a warning that would eventually become a chilling prophecy. She told her colleagues that if Kohberger were allowed to continue his studies, he would likely go on to stalk or sexually abuse students once he became a professor himself. The university was warned that female students were creating informal warning systems, alerting each other when Kohberger was in the hallway, arranging escorts to their cars after 5 p.m., and refusing to be in a room with him unless the door was wide open. Yet, despite these warnings, he was kept in the program. He was allowed to keep his office and his university housing. Just 10 miles away, across the state line in Moscow, Idaho, 4 young college students were living their lives, completely unaware that a man who was obsessed with sexual burglary was watching them from the shadows. The mystery began on November 13, 2022, at 1122 King Road. This was a classic college rental house. 3 floors, multiple roommates, and a revolving door of friends. On the 3rd floor were best friends Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogan. On the 2nd floor were Xana Kernadle and her boyfriend, Ethan Chapin. In the basement, 2 other roommates, Dylan and Bethany, were asleep. The attack happened with surgical precision between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. For weeks, the town of Moscow lived in terror. There were no signs of forced entry. No murder weapon was found. The police seemed to have nothing. But behind the scenes, the mind mystery was already starting to unravel. One of the most haunting pieces of the story is the testimony of Dylan, the surviving roommate. She told investigators that she woke up to the sound of what she thought was a dog playing. She opened her bedroom door on the 2nd floor and heard a voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." When she opened the door a 3rd time, she saw him, a tall man in all black, wearing a mask that covered his nose and mouth. She described his bushy eyebrows and said she stood in frozen shock as he walked right past her and out the sliding glass door. This is a real psychological phenomenon called tonic immobility, when the brain is so overwhelmed by fear that the body simply cannot move. It wasn't until nearly noon the next day that the 911 call was placed, reporting an unconscious person. When the police finally entered the home, they found a scene that would haunt them forever. But they also found one thing the killer didn't intend to leave: a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Madison Mogan. This sheath was the key. On the button snap, forensic teams found a microscopic speck of DNA. While they waited for a match, they began a massive digital manhunt. They looked for a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra that had been seen on security cameras circling the house 4 times before the murders. They tracked that car all the way back to Washington State University, to Bryan Kohberger's parking spot. The investigators then looked at his phone records. They discovered that his phone had pinged near the King Road house at least 12 times in the months leading up to the attack. He wasn't just a random intruder, he was a stalker. He had been watching them, learning their patterns, and waiting for the right moment. On the morning of the murders, his phone was turned off or on airplane mode between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m., the exact window of the killings. But then, at 9 a.m., while the bodies were still undiscovered, his phone pinged near the house again. He had returned to the scene of the crime to see the chaos he had caused. The mind mystery deepened when Kohberger left for winter break, driving across the country to his parents' house in Pennsylvania. The FBI was right behind him. They watched him through his windows. They saw him wearing surgical gloves in the middle of the night, taking his trash and placing it in a neighbor's bin to hide his DNA. They didn't know they were being outsmarted. Agents recovered the trash, tested it against the DNA on the knife sheath, and found a 99.9% match to Kohberger's father. When he was arrested on December 30th, 2022, the world finally saw the face of the man who had been studying them. His history was bizarre. He had posted a survey on Reddit months earlier, asking criminals to describe their thoughts and feelings during their crimes. He wanted to know, why did you choose that victim? And how did you leave the scene? He was using his academic research to prep for his own dark transition. The legal battle lasted nearly 3 years. In July 2025, faced with a mountain of evidence, the DNA, the car, the phone pings, and even an Amazon history showing he bought the K-bar knife and sheath months earlier, Kohberger did the unthinkable. He took a plea deal. He admitted to the murders in exchange for removing the death penalty from the table. During the sentencing, he sat in total silence, showing no remorse as the families spoke of their broken hearts. The judge called him a hollow vessel and a coward before sentencing him to spend every remaining day of his life in a concrete cell. Today, the mystery isn't about who did it. The mystery is how we can prevent the next Bryan Kohberger. It is a story about the dangers of ignoring red flags and the terrifying reality that sometimes the person studying the monster is the monster themselves. Stay curious, stay aware, and remember that sometimes the strangest mysteries are the ones hiding in plain sight.